I was very sick this past week, but the content must continue. I got the seasonal cold, flu, whatever. This is a Saturday, and on Tuesday, I completely hit me like a truck. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and my lights went completely out. And I'm finally feeling better. And we got to record some videos. We got to get the next few weeks ready. So we're going to do that today. Back in November, I did a 3-part series on a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh games I got. Starting kind of with Retro Game Con in October, I had started buying some complete in box Yu-Gi-Oh games, kind of going for like a complete set. Everything from the Game Boy Advance games, getting them complete in box with their promo cards, and so on. And since November, I bought a lot more, kind of going mostly for Japanese stuff now that I'm looking at it. But there's a handful of North American games here. I'm realizing this is a very, very, Japanese heavy video, but that's okay. So in a way, this is kind of like my epilogue to those episodes back in November. So we'll get right into it. One thing I'll say right away is that pretty much every game here was developed and published by Konami. Konami was also in charge of the TCG and the OCG and most of Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. So if I don't say anything about developer and publisher, it's just because it's Konami. So first game we're going to talk about is an interesting one, and that is Power of Chaos. Ooh, as the disc is falling out. Power of Chaos. So this is a trial version to Power of Chaos. Power of Chaos itself was a trio of PC games released in Europe and North America in 2003 and 2004. Europe got one of the games in late 2003, and then the other 2 games were in 2004, and North America got all 3 games in 2004. But it's interesting because I mentioned Europe and North America, and this is a very rare case of Japan never getting these games. Most of the time, in 90% of Yu-Gi-Oh's releases, Japan gets the game first, and then North America, and then maybe Europe gets it sometimes before us, but usually Japan always gets it first. And this is one of 2 games I can think of that Japan never even got. The other one being Dawn of Destiny on Xbox, if I'm not mistaken. So Power of Chaos was a trio of 3 games. It was Yu-Gi the Destiny, Kaiba the Revenge, and Joey the Passion. And what each game was kind of like a follow-up to the previous one. So Yu-Gi the Destiny released first, and that was basically just a tutorial of Yu-Gi teaching you how to play Duel Monsters. Then in the follow-up, Kaiba the Revenge was basically the story mode to the entire trilogy where, okay, now you've learned to play the game, now you're actually taking on Kaiba and Kaiba Corp and just trying to take him down, right? So that's cool. And then Joey the Passion was sort of like the flavor to the trio where now you've learned, now you've put your skills to the test, and now you're just doing a whole bunch of different game modes. So that's actually a really cool progression. We would never see anything like that today. Not that physical PC games are really it anymore, but it is cool that they were released in succession with that in mind. And it's also cool because each game introduced more cards. So Yu-Gi the Destiny only had 155 cards in it, and then Kaiba the Revenge added 311 cards, and then Joey the Passion added 245 cards for a grand total of 711 cards available at the time, which in 2004 here in North America, that's probably around what was available. So kind of a neat little piece of Yu-Gi-Oh history in North America, I guess. The only physical PC games, I think, that were contained to themselves. I know that there was Yu-Gi-Oh! Online where you could buy the disc instead of just downloading it from the internet. Obviously, that was very common back then. But I think the only PC game that is contained within itself, or at least contained across 3 different games. So that's pretty cool. Trial version, just happened across it. I don't have any of the trio that's on the docket next. But yeah, I don't really collect PC games. I have some just from when I was a kid, but yeah, that's a project for another day. Next up is a pair of PlayStation 1 games from Japan specifically. First one is Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Capsule Great in Battle, specifically the PlayStation The Best variant. So this is the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh game. Obviously not this specific release. This is a greatest hits type release, but it is the first ever Yu-Gi-Oh game released in 1998 in Japan, and was only ever in Japan and never came to North America. And it's a polished version of Capsule Monster Chess. Now, Capsule Monsters, that arc comes from the manga at the time, but we did also end up getting Capsule Monsters in the anime years later. So yes, there are multiple Capsule Monsters that are itself related, but the game specifically is based on the manga. So that's pretty cool. But it's also interesting to me that the first Yu-Gi-Oh game ever wouldn't be like a plain dueling one. But the more that I think about it, like the TCG wasn't out in 1998. The OCG probably wasn't as polished as like the current game, or even the game that we got in like 2002 in the TCG. So it doesn't really surprise me that, you know, we got what we would consider a spin-off, because maybe it wasn't so much a spin-off back then. Yu-Gi-Oh was still in its infancy. But, you know, if, I have this mindset every so often for a lot of games, is that if this is a kid's first Yu-Gi-Oh game, this is what they expect Yu-Gi-Oh to be. And Capsule Monsters, Duelist of the Roses, the next game we talk about, they're not typical Yu-Gi-Oh experiences. So if you're a kid playing this, you're kind of like, oh, this is not what I thought Yu-Gi-Oh is, but it's also not really what Yu-Gi-Oh is. So kind of interesting. There did end up being a Game Boy Color game, also based on the Capsule Monster arc of the manga, that would just take this experience that's on PS1 and condense it down, which is cool. And then maybe there was another game that we might talk about later. But so this specifically is the PlayStation The Best variant that would release in 1999, a year after the original release in 1998. And PlayStation The Best is a Japan-only, lower-budget re-release line on every Sony system except PS5 so far. So on PS1, there's PlayStation The Best games. On PS2, there's PlayStation The Best games. PS3, PS4 all have, in one way or another, a The Best variant, like with that specific title. We got Greatest Hits. It's basically the same thing. So I'm pretty sure Greatest Hits is the line that Sony uses for PS1, 2, 3, and 4 here. So I think it's just The Best in Japan, which is pretty cool. And there's a couple of variants like this in the video. So I have the original game. I've showed it off in some video in the past, but yeah, just wanted to show off that I got a neat variant. And the next one, kind of on the same wavelength, is Shin Duel Monsters, or better known as Forbidden Memories, and this is the PS1 Books variant. So Forbidden Memories is the precursor to Duelist of the Roses, and if you've seen this channel before, I've talked forever about Duelist of the Roses, how much I love that game, but this precursor sucks. So the game was originally released in 1999, and it didn't come to North America until a couple years later, but I don't like Forbidden Memories. When I first started collecting games, when I first started collecting for the PS1, I bought it because it was a Yu-Gi-Oh game, and I did not like it. I'm not nostalgic for PS1 and N64 graphics to start, so my patience is kind of low for those games, but also I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know if I just chose like the wrong things early on, but I ended up getting like totally screwed, like getting absolutely beat down by like some final boss when I really did not know what I was doing. So I'll probably never go back to it, but you know, we'll continue to collect the games anyway. So this is the PS1 Books variant, which was another Japan-only budget re-release line, but it started when the PSONE console variant was released, which itself was a budget budget re-release console of the original PS1. So typically the gray PS1 that everybody knows is known as the PSX in a lot of ways, and the PS1 or PSONE is known as the re-release, which is like a quirky little console variant to the PS1, which is pretty cool. But yeah, after that was released in 2001, then Sony started to re-release games again under this line. This game also, I'm pretty sure, had The Best release, so this was released after that as well. The big difference between The Best releases and PSONE Books releases, besides just obviously design, is that they were smaller. So these came in smaller jewel cases. Maybe you can tell from here. I don't know. Smaller jewel cases, but the manuals came bundled outside the case. So they would be sent packaged together, but the manual would be sitting outside, but they saved money by doing a smaller jewel case. I originally thought I just got like not in this one, but in a previous game I had gotten, I thought I just got like a bootleg case of it, but like no, that's actually how these came. So the manual would come outside, it would come wrapped together, and that's how you get it. Obviously, I don't have the manual here, but that would be a nightmare collecting for, you try and put these things on the shelves and then the manual is just out in the open. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like putting games next to it would, I don't know, just wouldn't look good. So that's kind of funny. But I mentioned that the best releases had releases all through PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, but also these PS1 books variants had some releases until 2007, according to Wikipedia, considering the PS3 came out in like 2006, which is kind of funny. At least I think the PS3 came out in 2006. If it wasn't 2006, it was 2007. So it's funny that these got releases like all throughout the PS2's lifespan, which is kind of funny. But yeah, that's kind of cool. Monster Capsule Breed and Battle also has a PS1 books variant. I don't have that one yet, but we're gonna work on finding that one. So yeah, Shin Duel Monsters, but Forbidden Memories. Not a fan, but maybe somebody here is. The next one is a game I talked about back in November, and I mentioned getting this version then. I just haven't had a chance to put it in a video. So this is Dark Duel Stories. This is now we're in North America again, and this is Dark Duel Stories, but specifically this is the second printing. So the original printing of Dark Duel Stories had Dark Magician, Blue Eyes White Dragon, and Exodia the Forbidden One as the promo cards. And when I tell you that those promo cards are crazy expensive, they are crazy expensive. I will never buy them unless I hit the lottery. We're talking like minimum $1,000 investment just to get those three. And that could even be outdated. It could be at least like $2,000 just to get those three in even acceptable condition. So I'm never going to do that. I showed off the first printing. The actual game itself, the first printing, isn't expensive. It's the promo cards that make it expensive. But I got that back in November, and I just bought different promos for it. I bought like prismatic rares or like prismatic parallel rares, like special anniversary ones to go into that box. But this one, second printing, all it is it just comes with different cards, Salamandra, Sayaru, and Acid Trap Hole, and I got those. So this one took a little bit longer to get in from November, but now I have this. I have both versions, first printing, second printing, but the second printing has the actual promo cards released with it. So, and I did also learn some new info about this, which I think is interesting for me to share. So I just showed off Forbidden Memories, but that was in Japanese. And this, Dark Duel Stories, in North America was technically the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Game released in North America by 2 days. I don't remember the exact dates, but in 2002, Dark Duel Stories was released, and then Forbidden Memories was released like 2 days later, which is kind of funny. The GBA had condensed Yu-Gi-Oh! Experiences to begin with, but this one on Game Boy Color, different screen, different graphics, different hardware, is even more condensed. I've tried playing it before, and I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. But yeah, that's kind of cool. So that's neat. Yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to share about it. So cool. Now I have 2 versions of the exact same game with just 3 different cards. Next one is a game I showed off in Japanese in November. Now we have it in English, but I got Capsule Monster Coliseum. I was just talking about Capsule Monsters before. I had this game in English, but just the disc. I don't know why on God's green earth I bought just the disc, but I got the box, I got the manual, I got the promo cards. So now it's complete. And just to very briefly go over it, this is a 2004 Yu-Gi-Oh! Spin-off, but developed by Winkysoft, which is different from Konami, kind of funny. I was doing some research on Winkysoft, and I will just say that maybe there's a game we talk about in a future video that is developed also by Winkysoft. And this is, again, just based on the Capsule Monster manga arc, not necessarily anime just yet. But yeah, it's cool. It's just a follow-up to the previous 2 games. And I don't think we have any Capsule Monster games since then, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, like I said, it's probably a nightmare for new players since they don't know what it is. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm going to come back to the PS2 in just a moment because I want to talk about these 5 games first, and it would make more sense to explain the next game. But I mentioned Tag Force in a video back in November. Specifically, I only had Tag Force 4. I don't know how that's possible, but Tag Force was a series on PSP, which was a lot like the Game Boy Advance and DS releases for Yu-Gi-Oh! Just on PSP. So Game Boy Advance had its own games, DS had its own games, PSP had its own games. So I showed off Tag Force 4 in Japanese in that video, and now I have all 6 Tag Forces. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So yeah, now we have all of them. I'm not going to talk about all of them in detail, just because I don't really know a whole lot about them, to be completely honest with you. I know 3 of them were in the GX era, GX arc of the anime era, and the other 3 were in the 5Ds era. So like 1, 2, 3 was GX, 4, 5, 6 was in 5Ds. But yeah, there was 6 released in Japanese. I had 4, now I have the last 5, which is, I had number 4, and now I have the last 5. And they were released pretty much yearly from 2006 to 2011. And yeah, it's literally just the GBA and DS games, like I said. But it is cool because North America didn't get Tag Force 3 or Tag Force 6, which is kind of weird. I don't know why we skipped the last in each era, kind of funny. But there was also voice acting in the Japanese versions of these games, not in the North American releases, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so there were 6 PSP Tag Force releases, but there was one more Tag Force game, and this is how we come back to the PS2 with GX Tag Force Evolution. So in Japan, it was released as GX Tag Force Evolution, Tag Force, part of the Tag Force line, but more specifically, it was the first Tag Force that was on PSP, but it was ported to PS2, and then it added some functionality to Tag Force 2 on PSP. So it's basically Tag Force 1 on PS2, but you could communicate between PSP Tag Force 2 and this game, which is kind of cool. Not really a whole lot of that on PS2. I mean, DS and Wii, there's a ton of that, right? But I don't think there's a whole lot of that between PS2 and PSP. I could be totally wrong about that. Please tell me if I'm wrong, because I would love to know more about that. But it was initially released in Japan in December 2007, which kind of matches up. First, Tag Force was released in 2006. Second, Tag Force was released in 2007. So that kind of matches. But then it was released a month later in North America in January 2008 as GX, the Beginning of Destiny. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we got such different names. We got Tag Force in English, so I don't know why it wasn't marketed the same way. Also, since we got Tag Force 2, so I don't know. That's kind of weird. But yeah, also, what's with this naming? Like the Beginning of Destiny? We had a Dawn of Destiny on Xbox in 2004. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Konami was thinking with specifically the North American release. But it is cool, like I said, that there was some communication via USB from the PSP games to the PS2, because I have never heard of that happening in the past. So the next handful of games are going to be kind of rapid fire. I talked about them all in detail in both the DS and Game Boy Advance videos in November, and also a little bit in Retro Game Con, that video too. So all I'll say is that if you really want to hear about these games, they're all kind of the same thing. They're all Yu-Gi-Oh! Campaigns, but if you want to hear more about them, go watch those videos in the past, because I just didn't want to talk about them all again. So next few, totally rapid fire, so we'll go through them. Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters International 2. There was an International 1, and there's now an International 2, which came to North America as 7 Trials to Glory, or World Championships 2005. There was Duel Monsters EX 2006, which, not GX, it's Jade and Yuki, that's the GX arc, but it's not. Ultimate, or here in North America as Ultimate Masters World Championships 2006. On the DS, we are almost complete getting them all in Japanese. So this is Nightmare Troubadour, World Championships 2007, World Championships 2008, Stardust Accelerator, World Championships 2009, and Reverse of Arcadia, World Championships 2010. And then, wait, 5? Oh, wait, no, I did complete them all. Okay. I have World Championships 2011. I showed that off in a video years ago. But there was one more, and that is here in North America, we got it as Spirit Caller, but in Japan, it was Spirit Summoner. So I also have Spirit Summoner, but we got another budget release. So this one is the Konami the Best variant. So slightly different from PlayStation the Best. Obviously, this can't be PlayStation the Best because this is on a Nintendo system, but it's same thing. It's still a budget title. It's got this, very white outline. So yeah, I for some reason I thought I didn't have all the DS games, but maybe I did, or maybe I didn't, and then I just bit the bullet and bought the last one. I don't know. This has been everything since November. So yeah, so those were Game Boy Advance and DS games. Next two also kind of rapid fire. Not really much I need to say about them. On Wii, there was Wheelie Breakers, which is 2009 racing game where it's just Mario Kart, but cards are your, what's the word? Cards are your power-ups. Thanks. So there's that. And then also on Wii, I showed off Dual Transer in a previous video, and Dual Transer is, if I recall correctly, it was this really cool story mode where you're kind of playing in like Norse mythology, which was very in line with like the 5D's TCG sets at the time, which is pretty cool. But in Japan, they got this really sick scanner box. This box is humongous. Yeah, so the game, so Wheelie Breakers was 2009, Dual Transer was 2010. It was initially released in North America and then in Japan in 2011, which is weird. But Japan got this version with the scanner. So not only, actually, I don't know if they got, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know if they ever got a specific just game release and then they got the scanner release. I'm starting to think they only got the scanner release, which, whatever the case is. But this one I bought, it was the only one on eBay, which is crazy. But I bought it, and I was going to open it. I wanted to like check out the scanner. You can see a little bit of the scanner right there. But I took the scanner out of the box, and the scanner is brand new, still in plastic. Never opened it. I'm like, oh, I am not going to do this anymore. So I stopped opening up the scanner, put it back in the box, which was an experience. This packaging is all sorts of weird. But yeah, it was a scanner that you could download cards into the game, but you would only be able to use commercially released cards in the OCG, which, yeah, kind of makes sense. It's USB based with the Wii, which also not a whole lot of things use the USB port in the Wii, but also there's like no info on it. There's like a handful of forums that talk about it, but nothing concrete at all. So I wanted to know if there was any quirks about the scanner, and I just couldn't find anything about it. So yeah, I don't know. With that said, there are two more games, or two more things, I should say, both of which came from Chris at Rewind Arcade. Chris is super duper awesome. Rewind Arcade is a super duper awesome channel, and you should 100% go check out his videos because he knows his game history way better than I do. But he hooked me up with a really sick package of a whole bunch of Japanese exclusive stuff that I'm going to show off kind of over time in the next couple videos. They didn't really all fit into one video thematically, so we're just going to show off some stuff as time goes on. So the first thing that he sent me was something I actually asked for. We were talking right before Christmas, I think, and I was like, hey, can you check to see if you can get this cheaper than when I can do it on eBay? And we went through a whole laundry list of stuff. He bought it all, sent it to me, and it was great. And the first one, the only Yu-Gi-Oh thing I asked for was the 1,000 Rule Bible, which was just a magazine, and it's literally just a strategy guide for the OCG at the time, which is really, really cool. I don't know if I even checked to see what year this was. What year was this? I don't remember. Does it have a printing date? I didn't, honestly, this is the first time I even thought to check. But, yeah, it's like I said, literally a strategy guide for the OCG at the time, and I don't have a year on this. At least I don't see one. Yeah, honestly, I could have looked that up. But, yeah, very early OCG release because of the card designs on the front. But, yeah, pretty neat. Blackluster Soldier came a little bit later after the starter decks, I think, so it could be a little bit. Buster Bleeder is also a later set. Yeah, so not the very beginning of the OCG, but pretty early on in the OCG. So this was really cool. I just happened to come across, and I was like, can you find this? And he's like, yeah, found it. But the other thing, he's super awesome, and he threw in something else that he kind of just had in his stock that he's like, okay, you're a bud, here you go, because I know you like this stuff. And here we go. Here's a lot of explaining to do. This is Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 2 Dark Duel Stories. Hold on. This Dark Duel Stories is different. Hold on. Is different from the Dark Duel Stories I showed earlier. So, North America's Dark Duel Stories is technically Duel Monsters 3. This is Duel Monsters 2. So, Duel Monsters 1 was on original Game Boy. We never got that. Duel Monsters 2, Game Boy Color. Duel Monsters 3, Game Boy Color. But Duel Monsters 3 is a different title. But that different title came to North America as Dark Duel Stories. So, Konami just really liked the title Dark Duel Stories and reused that title from Duel Monsters 2 on the Duel Monsters 3 release in North America, which is kind of weird. And then there was Duel Monsters 4 that had a trio of releases released only in Japan, and then Duel Monsters 5 was the first one that was released on Game Boy Advance, I think. But yeah, pretty much before the Game Boy Advance, we only got one single Game Boy Color game, and it's Dark Duel Stories. It's Duel Monsters 3, which was a different title, but used the title for Dark Duel Stories 2. I think that made sense. Hopefully you followed along. But this game was originally released in Japan in July 1999, and like I said, was never released in North America until now. What notes do I have here? I don't know. It's kind of like what I was saying about Dark Duel Stories. It's just sort of it. I mean, it's limited by the hardware, right, of the Game Boy Color, right? Game Boy Advance, I think you can really play Yu-Gi-Oh! At least my experience on Eternal Duelist Soul, but yeah, it's hard to play these games. But they had a story mode, and it's whatever. You could probably try it, but yeah, kind of cool. So Chris, thanks so much for throwing this in. Thanks for getting me 1000 Rule Bible. Thanks for everything you got me in the next couple videos. But yeah, super cool. And that's the end of everything that I got. I mean, I said it a lot, but we've talked about a lot of these things already. And going back to what I was just saying, that we never got Dark Duel. I keep saying Dark Duel Stories 2. That we never. No, wait. It's okay. We never got Duel Monsters 2 or Dark Duel Stories. However, at the end of this month, this is February 1st that I'm recording this on for release, hopefully this week. But at the end of this month, we are getting the Early Days collection for Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is a compilation on Switch of all the pre-GX Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games. So, like I said, Duel Monsters 1 on the original Game Boy, North America never got. Duel Monsters 2, 4, and 2 and 4 on Game Boy Color, North America never got. We got Duel Monsters 3, which uses the same title as Duel Monsters 2, but so 3 out of the 4 titles we didn't get. And then on Game Boy Advance, we got every title except one, which was like a version, or is either it's the original release of one of the Game Boy Advance games. And so all of those games, all of the pre-GX core series, I think? No, even some of the spin-offs like Dungeon Dice Monsters are all coming to Switch in a collection called the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days Collection. It's going to have a ton of extra functionality like, online play that we don't need a Game Boy Link cable for. and bringing some of these games to North America for the first time in English, which is really, really cool. I think it's like $50. I was just complaining a couple weeks ago about Donkey Kong Country Returns HD being $60, but yeah, I'm super excited for that. I only ever really played Eternal Duo Soul growing up, so I will probably give those games a shot now that I can play them in a little bit better of a way, if you will, on Switch with some good updates to game, not to gameplay, but to like graphics and more accessibility too. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, if you're wondering what is there still left for me to collect in Yu-Gi-Oh, there's still a couple things. I mean, like I said, the PC trio I don't have. There's a Game Boy Advance video cartridge that I don't have. I had it growing up, but I don't have it anymore. And then just like other variants, like there's a ton of just random variants in this video. So we'll get around to those when we get around to those. But that's everything. Yeah, it's a lot, but yeah, we're just having a good time. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. If there's anything in this video that I missed or that I got wrong, please tell me. I would love to continue learning about these games as much as I have hopefully taught you something. So with that said, hopefully I feel better in a couple of weeks. But with that said, bye.